it's Lizzie. Welcome to my Airbnb in LA. I'm so excited to be back home. I was traveling so much in the West Coast, Northeast. It feels so good to finally be back. So I am starting a bipolar meds video series on my YouTube channel on every single medication I've ever been on. This is the intro video to that video. I'm basically going to go in chronological order from the first antidepressant I was ever prescribed before they knew I was bipolar up until now, what medications I'm currently taking. I will talk about the results, side effects, horrible symptoms going on and off the medicines, my favorites, recommendations, what I hated, all the horror stories of times my psychiatrist prescribed me a medicine that they should not have prescribed at the time, which looking back ruined months of my life. I don't want you guys to be prescribed the same mistakes that I was, so I think this will be so helpful going in detail how all of the medicines will affect you, how long they take to kick in, side effects. I'm also going to describe the times I cold turkey impulsively went off all my medications all at once, ditched my psychiatrist and treatment plan, and why I ended up going back on meds again. This is the intro video to this entire series. Currently, I'm on Vraylar, Seroquel, and Lamictal, and I'll explain at the very end the chemical composition of those meds and how they're affecting my brain. Number one, in March of 2015, I went on an antidepressant called Wellbutrin, aka bupropion. So there are two different names for every single medicine, sometimes 3 or 4. The original medication that was created and then the generic, cheaper form of it that has the exact same chemical compound. So in the video, I'm going to say both names just so that you guys know what I'm talking about. Wellbutrin is called an antidepressant, an atypical antidepressant, because it is an NDRI versus most antidepressants are SSRIs. So to define all these terms really quick, NDRI stands for norepinephrine dopamine reuptake inhibitor. SSRI, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. So reuptake means that every time your brain fires neurons, there are extra neurons that are not fired that the brain basically puts in a trash can. So a reuptake inhibitor just prevents more of those chemicals from going into the trash can. So it's not really adding anything to your brain, it's just taking some of them away so that they're not thrown away. There are several compounds intrinsically connected to depression. Serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine are the main ones. Serotonin has to do with happiness, cognition, memory, learning, those reward feelings you get after completing a task. But mostly serotonin is just happiness. Dopamine has to do with pleasure. So if you have sex, if you're addicted to heroin, but in a normal context, it has to do with motivation and feeling rewarded after doing a task, desiring to do actions. Serotonin, happiness, dopamine, pleasure, norepinephrine, energy. Norepinephrine is the fight or flight response. It has to do with alertness, energy, being able to retrieve memories. Serotonin, happiness, dopamine, pleasure, norepinephrine, energy. That's just the basic way to understand them. So Wellbutrin allows the brain to fire more norepinephrine and dopamine. When I took Wellbutrin, unfortunately, it had 0 effect. It took 3 weeks to a month to kick in, so I was in severe depression in college, failing out of my classes. My best friend's mom, who is a psychiatrist, actually recommended this medicine for me based upon my experience in depression because it was less sadness, grief, hopelessness, and more just a physical exhaustion, mentally being slowed down. So it seemed like at the time that norepinephrine and dopamine were more involved. Wellbutrin can give you seizures if you drink alcohol on it, so I never had any alcohol. I was under the drinking age at the time, so it was pretty easy to not drink alcohol, but if your psychiatrist doesn't tell you, do not drink alcohol. Once I went off this medicine to switch to Prozac, there were a few hours in one day where it was sobbing, hopeless, complete anguish, the worst feeling in the world, just so intense, when I gradually tapered off of it and went off all the way. So the second antidepressant I went on worked so well, got me out of depression. It also took a month to kick in. It is called Prozac or Duloxetine. So Prozac, as I said, is an SSRI, serotonin selective reuptake inhibitor, so it only works on giving you more serotonin. Prozac is also used to treat depression, OCD, eating disorders, and anxiety. So it's used for so many mental illnesses. I started at 5 or 10 milligrams and I went all the way up to 90 milligrams, which is huge. And later I learned is illegal in some states and just the highest dosage ever, but it was because my depression was so severe. So I went on this medicine in May of 2015. I stayed on it all of the summer. It did mostly get me out of depression. But then coming back to my senior year of college, I just cold turkey went off the medicine in August because I was thinking I'd rather deal with the withdrawal effects now than later. I don't know. I had really bad interactions with the therapy office at my college as well, and I just couldn't deal with it anymore, and I wanted to be off. And looking back, impulsively going off medication is kind of a sign that you're bipolar. So it made sense looking back. Number 3, my favorite medication, lithium. I have such fond memories of how my personality was on lithium because it was the first bipolar medicine I ever went on. It directly protected me from mania and depression within a few days. Lithium is one of the first elements created in the universe. There were only 3 elements that started the universe, and lithium was one of them. Going all the way back to the ancient Greeks, lithium was used to treat bipolar. They would put bipolar people in lithium baths, and it would help with their bipolar. So lithium salt is actually what we prescribe to people who are bipolar. It can kill you if it's too high of a dosage. It's a really intense, loads of side effects, including dehydration, dizziness, you have to drink loads of water, you have to pee all the time, acne, it can cause weight gain. There's so many negative side effects, but I felt like at the time, all of the benefits super outweighed any side effects. Lithium is only used to treat bipolar. I'm sure rare cases they could give it to someone with major depressive disorder or schizophrenia, but usually only bipolar. When I went on this medication, basically my fall semester of my senior year of college, I would be in depression for 3 weeks. Then I would spike up into mania or hypomania. Then it would crash into really severe depression. And this happened 3 months in a row, so it was very cyclical. So I was very convinced at this point that I had bipolar, but I had not been formally diagnosed. Over winter break, I was back in Florida with my family. I went to a psychiatrist. I explained to them all my symptoms, and he's like, no, you're not bipolar. I can't diagnose you. But I was very adamant, and I was like, please, can I go on lithium? And he gave me lithium, and you have to do a lot of blood tests initially to make sure that you're not at a toxic level, which I don't want to scare you guys too much, so I might make my first video in this series on lithium. I had the same experience where I felt myself go really manic, and instead of crashing into depression, the medicine like protected me, calmed down the mania. I didn't crash into that anguish. And I was even self-medicating with alcohol at the time to prevent myself from going so manic. So instead, the lithium totally solved the problem. And it didn't help with all of my depression, but it definitely prevented me from getting into the manic spike that would then crash. So in that sense, it really helped me. The way lithium works is it goes throughout your entire nervous system. It increases serotonin, decreases norepinephrine. It regrows your brain and really heals you from all the effects of really bad depression. I love lithium. I love how I felt on lithium. I would definitely go on it again. What I loved about it is that the antidepressants I was on would take a month to kick in, whereas lithium kicked in within days, and I really, really love that. When you're having horrible symptoms, being able to immediately treat it is the best thing ever. Number 4, Duloxetine Cymbalta. This is an SNRI, selective norepinephrine reuptake inhibitor. It is used to treat depression and anxiety. I'm not really sure how effective this medicine was. Looking back, it was pretty cyclical, where I'd be in depression for 2 weeks, then normal for a week, then depression for 2 weeks, back to normal. Maybe it was 3 weeks of depression, but there was definitely a cyclical element happening. I don't think this medicine was working that well because I started going on lithium, then I went on duloxetine, then after that I went on Lamictal, and my depression didn't really get better until the Lamictal worked all the way. But I would say definitely it maybe made the depression like 40% better, but definitely I was still failing my classes, my brain was so slowed down, it was so difficult to do my life. Looking back, they should have put me on Prozac since it worked before, and not Lamictal. So number 5 is Lamictal lamotrigine, which is what I'm on right now, will probably be on for the rest of my life. I take 300 milligrams, 2 pills every night. It is an anticonvulsant medication, meaning it is also prescribed for people with seizures. I went on this medicine the second semester of my senior year of college. So I was on lithium, duloxetine, and then Lamictal was added as well. Lamictal takes 6 weeks to 8 weeks to kick in, and I was so angry looking back because I was failing all of my classes in college, and then I was given this medicine, this bipolar med that helps with depression, and it takes 2 months to kick in. Meanwhile, I'm failing all my classes and trying to graduate. So this was a horrible medication. She could have put me on something like Lexapro, Seroquel. There are loads of bipolar meds that kick in within a week. I think Lamictal long term is a great medicine to be on, but if you need immediate relief, it's a horrible idea. Refuse to go on it. You have to fight back against your psychiatrist. The World Health Organization says that Lamictal is the most effective and safest medicine. Lamictal, like lithium, also works all throughout the nervous system. It inhibits all sorts of neurotransmitters, and it totally makes sense to me why this also works for seizures, because if you're having a seizure, your neurotransmitters are overactive, so it's like calm down. If you have these extra overactive neurons, it kind of balances out the neurons. So also in bipolar, you have these overactive dopamine, norepinephrine, serotonin, so it calms you back to a normal level. It would be so cool though if someone had bipolar and seizures and they just had to be on one medicine that worked for both. That's probably how they discovered this medicine. From the research I've done, a lot of bipolar meds and meds for any mental illness are accidentally discovered. Lamictal does nothing for mania. It specifically helps depression episodes in people who are bipolar. So my experience, like I was explaining, where the mania would crash down, if that is ever happening where it's really manic and I can feel it crashing down, the Lamictal is like a floor that completely blocks it from crashing down into depression. It's amazing. I love this medicine so much. I definitely will make a really long video on my experience on Lamictal because it has horrible side effects going on that I was not warned about. Like, if you are female, the most painful period I've ever experienced. And this is so common, but my psychiatrist just forgot to mention everything. Honestly, psychiatrists are really bad at their job. Most psychiatrists I've found, I do minimal research and find out so much more than what they tell me. So then I met Trevor at Pepperdine. I was completely balanced on my medicine in May of my senior year of college. I graduated at the end of April, but then I had one more class to take, astronomy. This was the first time I had my brain fully back in over a year, so it was amazing finally doing a class and being able to comprehend the lectures and do the assignments at a normal pace and just fully be engrossed in academia again. It was amazing. But I was actually in a class with Trevor my last semester of my senior year of college, and I immediately wanted to be with him. I thought he was so hot, and he's so funny in class. We had some pretty intense conversations in May. I would make up excuses to need to see him, and then we cut each other off at the end of May and didn't talk again for a year. I really recommend reaching out to people who you feel like you could be in love with, because he had a dream about me and happened to reach out to me, and I had a dream about him and happened to reach out to him, and if we just never reached out to each other, we wouldn't be together, we wouldn't get married, and it's just so amazing. But anyways, the whole point of this story is I was completely balanced finally in May, and I was able to flirt with him and talk to him and all these things. And so then when I got home, I went to Florida for a year after college, and I completely went off all of my medicines, kind of like the last week of May, and I threw up a lot, and I had really bad, like I was almost passing out and all these things, because you're supposed to taper down from medication. So please don't do what I did. Make psychiatrist appointments ahead of time. So then I went back on Lamictal in September, I think. I don't know why my parents weren't more intense about getting me on medicine, but it's really hard to deal with someone who's bipolar when they don't want to be medicated. So I went back on Lamictal in August. It immediately started working. It got me out of depression, because I was kind of in depression, more manic that summer. I was pretty manic. I had some great writing that came out of that, but of course it's dangerous to be manic. I was going on a lot of Tinder dates. Obviously I don't hook up with anyone, but I would go on like 3 or 4 dates a week, talking to a lot of guys. It was pretty intense. I was just having fun, but obviously looking back, it was kind of manic. So then I was on Lamictal, I went to therapy, I learned a lot about myself and my bipolar, and then in January, I went off Lamictal completely and had no medication until that August. The reason I went off of Lamictal is because Lamictal does nothing for mania. So it really helps with depression and bipolar, but you can be super manic while on Lamictal, and so I felt manic on Lamictal. I craved being off meds. And so I really recommend adding on an antipsychotic, never being just on Lamictal. Even if you have bipolar 2, I really think you should be on another medication. I have bipolar 1. Originally I had bipolar 2. Then I had more intense manic episodes. So then number 6, when I went back on medication in 2017, I went on a medicine called Trileptal, which is also called oxcarbazepine. I don't understand why they name the medicines the most impossible things to pronounce. It's insane to me. Trileptal blocks sodium channels and stabilizes hyperactive neurons. It stops repetitive firing. So I would say that Trileptal is very similar in the same class of drugs as Lamictal. It's not that effective. I have no idea why a psychiatrist put me on this if Lamictal was working before. It was a horrible idea. Later on, my psychiatrist I have in California, she was so confused why I was on that, and I'm really happy that eventually I switched back to Lamictal. Trileptal, I almost passed out on the medicine all the time because you have to eat in the morning when you take the medicine, but it did force me to eat food when I wasn't hungry and not wanting to eat, so I think that was a positive. But I definitely did not do the fast before Mass the whole time I was on Trileptal. If you're not Catholic, basically the Eucharist, receiving communion, is the most amazing, most important thing in Catholicism. We believe that it is Jesus. And it's why I became Catholic and sacrificed so many relationships in my life. So we don't eat any food or drink coffee or anything 1 hour before receiving communion, but there are a lot of medical exceptions. So I was a medical exception because I tried the fasting thing and then I would almost pass out at Mass. So number 7, another antipsychotic, Latuda. And this is actually my first antipsychotic I ever went on. Lithium is considered a mood stabilizer, Lamictal, mood stabilizer, Trileptal, mood stabilizer, Prozac, Wellbutrin, Cymbalta, antidepressant. So finally, I was put on antipsychotics because clearly I had bipolar 1, and I'm so glad that I went on antipsychotics. First, I went on Latuda. My insurance was making me pay $1,000 per month after insurance. Basically, Latuda is a new medicine, so they don't have the generic form yet. But my psychiatrist was giving me a lot of samples tapering up, and so I had maybe 2 months of free Latuda, and it was amazing. I went on Latuda. My phone's fine. I went on Latuda because I was newly in a relationship with Trevor and I was super out of reality. My mind was working so fast. I felt so close to God, talking so fast. I just felt like so disconnected from him because every day felt like a week, and I just felt like I constantly was forgetting who he was and forgetting our relationship. So I decided to go on an antipsychotic. Latuda lauacidone is a typical antipsychotic used to treat schizophrenia and bipolar. It also helps with bipolar depression. By that, I mean not major depressive disorder, but depressive episodes in bipolar. If you have bipolar disorder type 1, it helps with depression in bipolar 1, which is really rare. Most antipsychotics push down mania. Mood stabilizers are like calm down in general. Antidepressants push you up. So it's really rare and amazing for an antipsychotic to also help with depression. Latuda lauacidone works by blocking dopamine and serotonin, and it blocks something called adrenergic. So adrenergic is a way to chill out your sympathetic nervous system. So there are two parts of your nervous system, the autonomic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. Your autonomic nervous system is something you are not in control of. So things like your heartbeat, breathing. Your sympathetic nervous system has to do with a fight or flight response. The size of your pupils, how much energy you have, whether or not you're tired, alertness. So everything I'm describing with that extreme sympathetic nervous system sounds like mania. So it makes sense that it calms it down. So number 8, the next medicine I went on is Seroquel, also called quetiapine, which I never have understood how to pronounce that. Again, my best friend's mom, who's a psychiatrist, she recommended after Latuda for me to go on Seroquel because you're able to control day to day how much Seroquel you're taking and how medicated you are. She described it as like the lines on a window that you can open and that you can open up and then close. Seroquel is an atypical antipsychotic, which means it works in a way that is different than the majority of antipsychotics. It is also prescribed to people who have schizophrenia and people who just have major depressive disorder without bipolar, without any mania. I am currently on 100 milligrams of Seroquel. I've been on Seroquel for 2 years, so it is very effective, but I had a lot of horror story experiences on it. So after my Lithium video, I'm definitely gonna make the Seroquel video and warn you guys about so many things. I was sleeping 12 hours a day for the majority of 2018 because I was on such a high dosage of Seroquel. And then once I went on a normal dosage that wasn't sedating me throughout the day and making me sleep for half the day, it stopped working at all. So that's why recently I've gone on another antipsychotic. Seroquel is a muscle relaxant. It's also prescribed for people who just need to go to sleep. It's a sleep aid, but it's something that is non-addictive. So after I went off of Seroquel or majorly went down my dosage, it no longer helps me to sleep, but I'm still able to sleep on my own, if that makes sense. Because I was very concerned going on a sleep medicine, and my psychiatrist assured me it's not addictive, and she was right. So it decreases dopamine, it decreases the adrenergic I was just talking about, it calms down your movements, and if you're so manic and cannot sleep, which is me when I've been off meds over the past few years, I can basically stay awake for 2 to 3 days. So Seroquel knocks you out, and if you're standing up, you will literally fall over because it's a muscle relaxant. I've also had some horror stories on airplanes with Seroquel, so definitely I will make my Seroquel video ASAP, much needed. So my last medication I've ever been on is an antipsychotic called Vraylar. I've only been on this for a few months and it is life-changing. So like I was saying with Seroquel, where it would knock me out at night, with Vraylar, I can sleep on my own. I don't have to take it right before I go to bed. It's not like I'm so manic, then I'm put to sleep. But I feel tired at night for the first time in 2.5 years. Vraylar is also called cariprazine. It treats schizophrenia, bipolar mania, and bipolar depression. So it works for both parts of bipolar. It decreases serotonin and decreases histamine. So histamine controls muscle movement, heart rate, and your central nervous system. So it totally makes sense that when I'm manic, my pupils are huge, my heart rate is so fast, I have so many ideas, I want to go work out all the time. And so it just calms down all of those things and I feel like a normal person. And sometimes I really miss that manic high, but I love so much just being more human and being on the same page emotionally as everyone else in my life. And it's fixed my relationship so much with my boyfriend. Before, I would be manic so much of our relationship, and he even felt like I was lying to him at the beginning of our relationship because I said that my bipolar is so under control with my medicine. And I've made videos about, I'm gonna link it below, about being in a relationship when you're bipolar, but because of all the serotonin and dopamine and oxytocin, all the positive emotions, all those positive chemicals when you're in love, that was like taking an antidepressant and it spiked me into being even more manic. So it's been really hard during the honeymoon phase of our relationship. And so being on Vraylar, it's finally gotten me to be more human and less manic all the time. So I'm really, really grateful to be on my medicines, and I'm gonna show you guys real quick. So these are the 3 medicines. Wow, this light, the sun just got wild. I'm going to move the camera real quick. So the 3 medications I'm on: 300 milligrams of Lamictal, 100 milligrams of Seroquel, and 3 milligrams of Vraylar. I am so excited for this bipolar med series on my channel. I love you guys so much, and I have linked below and in the cards and in the end screen the playlist to all the videos I've ever made about bipolar. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!